Hello. Today I'd like to welcome Dr. Kimberly Smith, the Associate Vice Provost for Student Success Initiatives at Virginia Tech, and she will explain to us how she ended up by using the rubric to help lead the charge on doing academic advising program assessment at Virginia Tech. Welcome, Kim.
Absolutely. Thank you, George. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Dr. Kimberly Smith, and I am the Associate Vice Provost for Student Success at Virginia Tech. And in this role, I have a number of areas that report to me, but one of those areas of responsibility does include academic advising. So I've been in the field for over 20 years in academic advising, and am also an active member of NACADA, the Global Community of Academic Advising, having served in various capacities. Most recently serving as a fellow for the Excellence in Academic Advising Initiative, which is a partnership between NACADA and the Gardner Institute.
Great, thank you very much, Kim. So as the Associate Provost, can you tell us a little bit more about the advising structure that you oversee and that how you use the rubric in order to look at the idea of program assessment and program review?
Absolutely. Virginia Tech is a large, comprehensive institution. We're the largest institution, state institution in the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia. And so our advising model could best be described as decentralized, meaning we have different modes of delivery, some different philosophical assumptions about academic advising between every college. As well as even within those colleges, various departments have different modes of operating for academic advising. And that has been in existence for many years. We have a significant number of primary role advisors. We also have faculty role advisors as well. But we are, as an institution, I think there's a general movement to using and adopting more primary role advisors within the institution. That being said, there was an awareness some years ago of the importance and potential impact of advising on student success. And because of that, we also wanted to ensure that all students received a high quality experience with academic advising, regardless of what their major is. And so at that point, the institution decided to create a senior level position. Our provost at the time said he wanted someone who woke up thinking about academic advising every day. And so hence my position was created at that time. And so a part of my role now has evolved to overseeing academic advising at a university level. And so we have over 600 academic advisors at the institution, again, falling in both category of faculty as well as primary role advisors. They do not report directly to me, but I do offer programming in terms of developing a philosophy and a mission of advising, in terms of assessment of advising, as well as providing professional development. And because this has just really grown and had such a positive impact at the institution, I actually have a team of folks now. There are about 5 of us who share that responsibility in some way or another of overseeing academic advising at the institution.
Well, thank you, Kim. And obviously, wanting someone who eats, sleeps, and drinks academic advising, a good choice was made. A brief editorial comment. Anyhow, before we really get into the results of the rubric and how you're applying it, I was wondering if we just to maybe take a step back, because we were both fellows within the EAA process, and I shared with you this rubric that I was trying to use at my institution and also within the e-tutorials at NACADA, and you said, yes, I would like to try to use this myself. And I was very happy because I wanted to sort of pilot this around as far as an idea. So if you could go ahead and maybe explain a little bit about why you thought this rubric might be helpful for you and how you ended up by sort of implementing it, and we can talk about results.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I mentioned previously, in my role overseeing advising at a university level, part of that responsibility involved assessment. And, I found that assessment obviously is critically important in terms of improving our services. But I've also found that that assessment really does help me in my role of influencing some of the other colleges and departments. So if I'm able to show where there is quality or where best practices are making a difference through assessment, then I'm then able to get more people to buy into the overall philosophy of what we're trying to establish at the institution. Secondly, just my personal leadership style is one that says we always have room for improvement. And so by default, that's the expectation that I share with my team. So again, in terms of overseeing advising at university level, I have a small team that's responsible for coordinating across all the colleges. It includes a team of 5 of us. And so all 4 of these members and myself usually participate in an annual retreat. And this retreat has become more and more important for us because as we are expanding our reach and expanding our initiatives, sometimes it can become overwhelming. And so it's really important to meet and prioritize the work that we're doing. We are very gung-ho and anxious folks who love to take on new things, but at some point you have to stop and say, what's the priority? What initiatives take priority based on the assessment and those sorts of things. And so this rubric just provided an excellent way to frame our conversation, to frame our retreat. Because again, remember with these 4 team members, all of us share some responsibility for coordinating across the colleges in terms of academic advising. And so we're very aware, at least anecdotally, of where there are some strengths, where there are some challenges, and where we need to have some improvement within our advising system.
That's super. So when you administered the rubric and you gave it to folks to respond to, how many did you give it to and what were some of the results?
Okay. Yeah, we shared it with all of our advising directors and a few folks within their units. And so we probably shared it with close to 25 different individuals across all the colleges there. And as a part of that process, we were able to get some really good results. Good results in terms of informing us of how we might want to move forward. And the first I'll talk about with the rubric would be the learning outcomes. In the area of learning outcomes, our average turned out to be 3.8, and that's out of a scale of 7. In advising curriculum, it was a 4.0, pedagogy of critical thinking, 6.5, means of delivery, or inequality and interaction was 6.5. So I'll just go back for just a few minutes and talk a little bit about each of those, if that's okay.
Great.
In terms of learning outcomes, we're very knowledgeable and aware that, learning outcomes are really what drive the work that we're engaged in. So what is it that we want students to do, to know, and understand as a result of interacting with the advisors or engaging in the advising process? It also helps us to be much more intentional and focused on, again, what is it that we need to do in each of these sessions or in between sessions through a flip model and that sort of thing? What do we want to accomplish? And so what we found on our campus was that this was probably the area where we were weakest. There are some pockets where learning outcomes were being utilized in a very intentional and proactive way. In other areas, I think what I would say to you is unofficially, there were learning outcomes, but no one had ever really sat down and thought about what specifically are the learning outcomes at a higher level. I would say in some of those cases, it was more like a task list than really coming at it from an advising as teaching sort of perspective, which really was closely related to the advising curriculum, because really your curriculum and your learning outcomes are so closely aligned typically that we knew that in some pockets of the institution, there were curriculums that existed and that sort of thing. But we also, as a part of this process, remember, our goal is to try to ensure some bit of consistency across the institution. And so while there may be some colleges or departments that were doing better than others, we wanted to really be able to shift the whole institution into a belief that there's certain things that we want students to do or to know or to understand at particular periods of time, regardless of what major they're in. So again, that's why, again, we rated ourselves, the average there about a 4, just simply because we knew that we had some work to do in moving the whole institution in that direction. pedagogy of critical thinking, we were able to see that we were doing fairly well in this area. And I will tell you, it all centers around this whole idea of advising as teaching philosophy. And although this is sort of what I would call definitely a collaboration, because I think we're doing well in this area based on our first year experience program. One of our learning outcomes actually of our first year experience centers around this critical thinking piece. And what we have been able to do is have many of our academic advisors serve as instructors for our first year experience course. So not only are they serving as instructors, but the students who are in that course are actually their assigned advisees.
Great.
And so it really helps to, of course, establish the relationship, but it also allows us to emphasize that there's lots that we can teach the student, lots that the students can be engaged in through the process of advising in ways that had not been done before. And then means of delivery, again, I felt we did pretty well with our average score being about a 6.5. Because we, again, have learned that advising does not have to occur just within the confines of the advising unit with the academic advisor, and that we really need to partner and do a good job so far with other divisions, other units who have similar goals. Because if you think about it this way, there's so much we want our students to accomplish, let's just say even in the first year. All of that cannot happen within advising alone. So if I know certain learning outcomes are being addressed within the first year experience, then in my advising session, I can choose to focus on different learning outcomes or an approach that allows me to complement whatever those learning outcomes were within the first year experience program. So we have some really great partnerships with folks in enrollment management, folks in our Division of Student Affairs that really help us to be quite flexible in terms of means of delivery and the quality of our interaction with students.
That's wonderful, Kim. And so it appears that you were able to take that holistic view of the delivery within Virginia Tech, but at the same time, you started taking some steps forward to make changes once you got the results back and you had these conversations and of different perceptions about what you were doing. What were some of the next steps that you decided to take?
Okay. So as a result of our conversations and discussions, we realized that there were two critical issues that were important and that we wanted to focus on immediately. And first, I guess there was a consistent acknowledgement among all of us that there are a lot of advising programs and initiatives that exist at our institution. We have over 30,000 students, undergraduate students. But the challenge is that these initiatives, programs, et cetera, are rarely codified and expressly connected to academic advising. And so our institution and any institution has developed learning outcomes, and they have a pedagogy of critical thinking and a clear curriculum, but rarely is advising seen as an avenue through which to support these different pieces. And so what we wanted to focus on was more intentionality in making sure that these connections exist. So basically, we wanted to make sure we were clear that purposeful advising is effective advising, not just haphazard, not just whatever comes off the cuff. So again, first, we wanted to make sure that we established that purposeful advising is most important. The second critical issue that came up as a result of our analysis was that to best support student success, we had to understand the importance of effective collaboration as a means of diversifying our faculty, diversifying student support service providers and administrators. All have the potential to have impact on students. And because of that, we want to harness that. That isn't a problem, it isn't an issue. We just want to harness that. So we wanted to advocate for embracing this perspective and reinforcing the idea that student success is everybody's responsibility and not just one singular unit. However, consistency and philosophy and has to exist. So although we want to invite more partners into this, we had to do so. We're going to have to do so with a clear understanding of what our roles are, how
Mhm.
they differ, how they may be similar. I'll give you a good example. We have a particular program at our institution, I think that, well, I know is designed to serve our underrepresented students in some very proactive and intentional ways. But when we have not opposing, but another unit contacting students about scheduling, and
Mhm.
it's not coming from their college and their advisor, it can create confusion for the
Mhm.
student. And so we don't want to eliminate that partnership. We just need to be clear on one another's roles and figuring out how to harness both um, uh, for the benefit of the student.
That's great. Looking back over this experience, you've used a rubric, you've had these conversations. What would you, how would you sit back and evaluate it in terms of a process? Are you happy with it? Do you think that that is shared across the board by others who are participating within it?
So we were very happy with the process. Of course, there are other standards out there
Mhm.
by which we could probably have been evaluating ourselves. But this, what I would say is it wasn't so heavy and all, well, it just wasn't so heavy and intense that it required more than us being able to have a conversation, I guess is what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
it's a very, what I would consider entry level approach
Yes.
to assessing what's going on. And then it provides you with lots of opportunity to figure out your next steps. And so it allowed a lot of individuals to have perspective and to contribute to the conversation. There's some student service providers, advisors, whomever, who sometimes get a little bit intimidated when they hear assessment, evaluation. But this was really, although it did include assessment, it was really framed more around a conversation about how do we improve what we're doing at this particular time.
That's great. And I think that's, I'm glad to hear that because that's the intention of this was to begin the conversation. Sitting back and looking at this from your experience, what recommendations would you make to anyone else who might consider using this rubric?
I definitely would say, in terms of moving forward, I would certainly encourage units to engage their entire staff around these conversations. But where there is the opportunity and centralized oversight does exist, I would encourage those individuals also to make sure that all of that individual unit information is feeding into the central level oversight process as
Hmm.
well. Because again, it's not always about just improving one particular unit. We want all of our students at our institution, regardless of major, to have some of the same similar experiences. And it's not that we are trying to make every college or department look exactly the same, because that will never happen. We want to embrace the uniqueness of each of these colleges and their missions, but we also want to make sure that all students have certain experiences and have a high level of satisfaction from those interactions.
That's wonderful. Is there any other recommendations or thoughts that you would have and you'd like to share with folks?
Absolutely. And when I mentioned to you earlier, I said that this was really, it just started the conversation for us. But what really, really helped us as we saw these recommendations, as we saw these insights that evolved, was this actually launched us into the idea, and we're actually implementing a university-wide strategic plan for academic advising. And through that process, we have actually developed a list of about 8 goals that we are in the process of implementing at our institution. And those goals can be seen on the slide here if you're interested in knowing specifically what those goals are. But for the sake of this conversation, why this has taken off and it's just become a really important part of our advising community is we use standards put out by EAA, the Excellence in Academic Advising, in terms of the 9 conditions of excellence in academic advising. And we actually invited every advisor within our advising community to join one of these subgroups, one of the conditions. to really examine our institution. And that's how those recommendations evolved. And in fact, we ended up with probably over 30 recommendations,
That's wonderful.
but realized we needed to synthesize those down to something that was manageable,
Hmm.
prioritize into something manageable. And so we spent about a year doing that and came away with a really great experience. And so this year we've moved to the next phase, which is based on these goals, what are the specific strategies and initiatives we want to implement? And so that includes things like we're really looking at the onboarding and training process for our academic advisors. We're actually looking at developing a career ladder because we want to certainly give our advisors opportunities to grow and develop in very meaningful ways that impact them. But there are also some initiatives we're developing around ensuring that we have diverse, inclusive, and equitable environments for our students within advising, because we know all of that is really, really central to focusing on student success.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim, for explaining that. And I'm very glad to hear that your experience was similar to what mine was as a EAA fellow, in that I made a comment to Casey the other day saying basically that I viewed the rubric as the uh, pack of Crayola crayons with only 8 in it, and EAA is the one with 64.
Good point. Good
But
point. Yes.
but by starting with the 8, we can help people move up to the 64.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where we are, definitely.
That's wonderful. Well, it's been a wonderful talking with you here today, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you much more continued success.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.